Hey guys, what's up? This is Panther Dragon, a top 100 challenger player in North America, and today I want to be doing a short update on my mid lane tier list, as some champions have emerged from the deep depths of never being picked, and now has come up and shown up in the mid lane. So as you can see, Ziggs went from 3rd place to 5th place. Nothing really happened to Ziggs, it's just I feel like there's better champions right now. My opinion on Ziggs is still the same, like he's still really consistent, he's got a decent early game, his mid game is kinda strong, and his late game is pretty strong. And of course he's really good at stalling the game out, as he can just constantly wave clear. And of course he's pretty good at sieging, as he does have poke, and he has an enhanced auto attack to hit the tower with. And of course he has zoning potential with his minefield. And yes, again, he's still a pretty good pick, he's really consistent, and does lots of damage. Again, he could be 0-3 and still be useful since he does have that wave clear. And number 4, we do have Nidalee. So again, I think she's really strong. I think she's one of the best late game champions there is. And of course, if she does well in the early laning phase, she's going to have a better mid game as she has siege potential. And if she's actually winning against her lane in early game, she has the ability to roam the other lanes and clean up with her Cougar form. But again, let's go back to that mid game, late game. Basically, she lands a spear. That means the enemy team won't want a team fight, as someone is already low and chunked, so they're already at a disadvantage if they initiate. In lower elo, people actually don't know how to play Nidalee. People aren't coordinated enough to know that Nidalee has to poke before engaging, and also I see Nidalee's actually go into Cougar form and jump into the team fight and instantly explode. And like the only thing that counters her spears or poke is someone with heals. Someone who can restore their team, someone like Soraka. So, Soraka is actually really strong right now, just because she can like level 1 wave clear, have a lot of pressure from level 1, and basically if she ever gets in a 1v1 matchup with her laner, and say the jungler never comes, she'll eventually win the lane, as she does have a lot of sustain, she has wave clear, and generally will put a lot of pressure onto the enemy mid laner, so that he's bound to stay at mid and farm the wave, or go roam and potentially not get a kill and lose a wave. And of course, Soraka does have that global heal, so that could potentially turn around a trade in bot lane. And of course, once mid game comes around, she'll just constantly be healing your team in team fights, so whoever got bursted down will potentially live. And of course, her star call does do pretty good damage in team fights. And of course, the longer the teamfight goes, the better she'll become, as she does shred magic resistance. And of course, she's good at prolonging teamfights with her heals. And even if the Soraka goes 0-5 in lane, and say her team does make it to like mid game, she'll still be useful, as she doesn't really scale with AP but more with levels. And yes, as she doesn't ward, she's basically free food for the jungler. But of course, she can still have her wave clear and be useful mid game. And at number 2, we do have Kassadin. Alright, so everyone knew how old Kassadin was. Basically got 1 or 2 kills, Kassadin would just snowball crazy and get out of control. So what's he like now? I think his early game actually improved, as he can trade fairly well against mages, as he does have a magic shield, and his W does give him more mana sustain. And even against AD, he still does fairly well against them, since he can just build armor against them. And of course, if you want to trade melee for melee, you have an active against them. But I think the biggest change for his laning phase is that he can actually last hit a tower now. Or I mean, he can actually last hit better. Since he doesn't run out of mana anymore, he has an auto attack reset, and he has extra magic damage on his auto attacks. And that's why you usually see now that Kassadins are keeping up in CS, even though they're being shoved to their tower, they can still last in and keep up in CS with their enemy laner. And then after he's level 6, he can start roaming, pick up kills around the map, and of course he's one of the champs who has very high mobility. And like of course if he's around the area, you're not getting away. He'll just keep rift walking towards you and hunt you down. Like it's probably impossible to get away from Kassadin. So if you're caught out, you're gonna die. Alright, so his roaming is better than his team fighting, as his specialty is picking people off, but in a team fight it's hard to pick people off if the enemy is grouped up. But of course if you have an initiation, he's actually really good follow-up, as he's a pretty good diver with Zonias. And of course his late game is still pretty good, not as strong as before, but still good enough to do what he can. And at number 1 we do have Kayle. So Kayle has actually emerged with a new build, the new Runon's Hurricane plus Nashor's Tooth, which I feel makes her teamfight presence really strong, since your E, Nashor's Tooth, your passive, and the Spellblade from the Mastery will proc on 3 targets. To me that sounds super broken, and I would have actually put her at number 2 if it weren't for that build. And like if she has Hurricane late game with like 500 AP, that sounds really monstrous. And even if you don't go that build, she's still a really good champ. Like obviously her early game is really average, she doesn't really have any characteristics that stand out, but of course once mid game comes, her damage is really strong, her ultimate is really good, and of course her W is good for healing herself plus kiting the enemy. And then when late game comes, she becomes an absolute monster, as Kayle's ultimate does last for like 3 seconds, her scaling with her E is really high, and her damage output is really strong, if not the strongest. And again, Fed Kayle is probably going to win you the late game, as I'm pretty sure she does too much damage and has too much utility. And of course her strengths are something like wave clear. She does have the potential to split push and 1v1 anyone in the game. And again, her teamfight's really strong too. She is basically like a hyper AP carry late game, and if you get late game against her, you're probably gonna lose. Alright, so I want to do some honorable mentions, and I want to start off with LeBron. So LeBron is actually really strong early, and I rated her at 4th place for my last tier list. The only thing I don't like about LeBron is if she ever goes even with her lane, the other laner is probably going to be more useful than she is, and basically if you don't snowball early, I don't really want her on my team. And again, I want to mention Lulu. Last tier list she was at number 5, but of course some champs did come in, and I had to remove her, and I actually think she's a better top laner now, as she has more escapes and stuff. And I don't know, I feel like she was outclassed at middle lane. But she's still pretty good, I don't mind her if she's on my team. She's still got her utility even though she does bad. And of course we have Orianna. I was actually going to rate her at 5th place. But I don't know, I'd rather have a Ziggs probably. I mean, Orianna does have a lot more teamfight presence than Ziggs. Her ult is still really useful for setting up other champions with ultimates. And yeah, she does bring a lot of damage to teamfights and utility. But I don't know, I feel like Ziggs players are more consistent. And obviously Ziggs can delay the game. Well, I think Orianna actually has a very high skill cap. And there's only been a few Orianna players who have impressed me, so that's my take on it. And of course Syndra players, people who actually play her, have really impressed me on what they can do with her. And yeah, if you're really good at her, go for it. Good Syndra players are really good at carrying the game. Hey, thank you for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please give a thumbs up as it does encourage me to make more types of videos like these. And of course if you subscribe, again, more encouragement. And of course comment below for discussion. And of course I will try to answer some questions.